Okay. We conclude today chapter 9. Chapter 9 is the beginning of a new section. Now that we understand what it means an animal soul slash natural soul slash vital soul, and we understand what is the godly soul, which we'll have a little more, of course, learning about it, but we have the basic ideas. So in this chapter, what is the whole point? The whole point between the two is that they don't live their own lives separately, but actually they live together within us and battling. It's a battle. And we have a metaphor, or rather we have an indication of this in the Torah, when Rebecca, the wife of Isaac, Yitzchak, was expecting. She felt, was a battle inside of her. So she was told by the prophet of the day, one nation shall prevail over another nation. In other words, she had twins inside. She had Esav and Yaakov and Jacob. Esau and Jacob, or in Hebrew, preferably Esav and Yaakov. And they were battling between each other in utero, let alone after when they came out. There was also battle for the blessings of the firstborn. And this is a metaphor for Esav represents the animal soul, and Yaakov represents the godly soul. And there is a constant battle between them. This is what's alluded to in that particular story. The Alter Rebbe gives a metaphor for this. A king who is now conquering a new nation, what does he want? He wants that the entire population of that nation should not only be under his, not only become subjects of his, but that they should surrender. Not only should surrender to be subjects of his, but that they should be completely subservient to him. So this is what the godly soul wants. It's like a king that's battling against another king. Two kings, animal soul versus godly soul. The godly soul wants to rule. Rule over who? Over what? Over our entire being, over our entire body. What does that mean? Well, first, wants to rule in a manner that it should be, the rest of the body should be disciplined according to its ruling, that of the godly soul. Not only that it should be disciplined, and all organs of the body should follow the godly soul. So the godly soul, when it wants to stretch out its hand to give charity, the limb is actually, shall we say, disciplined to follow the dictate of the metaphoric king, the godly soul, right? As opposed to not listening. And furthermore, that it should surrender. Now they completely surrender, that the limb should not fight back in any way. So one thing, you can be disciplined, I don't want to give, but you give. Now there's a surrender. And then even a deeper is you become a vehicle, as a chariot is the term. A chariot means, just like the chariot is driven by the rider, the chariot has no will of its own. So likewise, that the body that naturally has its own will, right? Body wants comfort, the body wants pleasure, that it is completely surrendered in such a way that it has no will of its own, has no desire of its own, just to fulfill the desire of the godly soul. Moreover, the Alter Rebbe says that all the limbs of the body should likewise be an expression only of the godly soul. That no alien should have any kind of dominion over the body and the limbs of the individual. So the Alter Rebbe goes now specifically. So specifically, it would be, we have 3 parts of the brain: Chachma, Bina, V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. In other words, that our intelligence should be permeated with the godly soul, that we should be discerning, understanding God. We should be pondering about how great God is and meditating upon it, and that should then lead to emotions. What kind of emotions? Well, feelings of love and awe of God, that we should thirst for him, that we should have a fiery passion for God. This is what the divine soul is trying to create in us from the intelligence that it now feeds the heart, that the heart should not only have a recognition of God, but pining, fiery passion towards God, ready to even sacrifice our lives for the sake of God. And that is how it should feel in the heart of the right ventricle of the heart, whereas the expression of the godly soul, as we explained in yesterday's class. But then it should overflow that love into the left ventricle of the heart, which is a place of dominance of the animal soul. Wow. The love of God should be now incorporating that even the animal soul also wants to have a love of God. In other words, to take away the natural love that the animal soul has for pleasure, for comfort in life, and now its pleasure should be the love of God instead. Its pleasure should be that which is the love of God, transforming the powerful lust that the animal soul has, that now it's being transformed because what? There is a king, metaphorically, the divine soul, that wants to rule entirely, not just in the right ventricle of the heart where its place is, but to overflow, and that the left ventricle of the heart, where the animal soul resides, it too should be incorporated and have a delight in God, and a love of God. And that's what it means in the Shema. We say b'chol levavcha, with all of your heart. It's b'chol, two bases there, which are an allusion to two hearts. We have two hearts. One, again, where the godly soul resides, or where it is reflects, or where it resides after it comes from the mind into the heart, the right ventricle, and the left where the animal soul is. So this is what the divine soul wants. It wants that we should understand, our relationship with God, God's relationship with the world. It should become very real for us, so much so that it now brings that feeling of God's presence and his realness, and a desire to cleave to God, to connect to God into our hearts, and it now overflows into transforming the animal soul, that it too wants a relationship and a connection to God. And then it should then go now to our behavior, that we should think words of connection, of words of prayer, words of Torah, that we should say words that are an expression exclusively of the divine soul in our thought and our speech. In other words, we'll be studying Torah a lot, we'll be praying a lot, we'll be saying words of goodness and kindness, right, that are a reflection of the divine soul. This is what the divine soul wants to have complete mastery over the individual. So complete mastery in intelligence, emotions, and then the garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action. Total. What does the other king want, the animal soul? To fight back and not allow that dominion, not allow the complete takeover. Like you have a king that takes over a nation, takes over a country, doesn't mean every corner of that country is totally devoted to him. Right? That's what the godly soul wants. It could be pockets that are left yet to conquer. In other words, you might have some kind of love for God, but not incorporating your animal soul with that love. You may have some forms of your actions that are, towards God, but your speech isn't always, been conquered. What does the divine soul want? Complete and exclusive conquering of the individual. In this case, what is the animal soul? It also wants the same thing. The animal soul that derives from Kalipa also wants to have complete control over the individual in their intelligence, in their emotions, in their garments of expression of thought, speech, and action. What is the best thing? Once we recognize this, is that we prevail over our animal soul, we vanquish her, and this is a parable that is brought down in the Zohar of a harlot. So the parable, the metaphor is as follows. A king had an only child, a son, and he wanted to test the wherewithal of his son. He's the crown prince, but does he have the moral strength that comes with the royalty that he is bequeathed with? So he wants to test him. So he hires a woman of the night, a harlot, who is extremely charming and extremely clever in order to seduce the son. And she needs to be true to her capabilities, even though she's being hired by the king, and she knows precisely that this is what the king wants, is ultimately that she should not succeed. But she can't go ahead with her job thinking, well, maybe I won't use all of my wiles. No. Use every clever trick and all of her charm in order to try to seduce the crown prince, the son. And the whole point is, of course, that this is ultimately that what Klip itself recognizes, that it's there for a purpose, that we should overcome it and not be led astray. And this is solely for our benefit. The king of the metaphor is, of course, God Almighty. The son is the godly soul, and the harlot is the animal soul. And when we recognize that we have those things inside of us, and there's a battle we're engaged in, then we're free to choose. And actually, that's the only time there is freedom in that instance. Because when we do things just natural, and we don't, there isn't a struggle, then we are just going on autopilot. And that autopilot is not something of the divine soul. Well, of course, someone's righteous, which will be the discussion in the next chapter, chapter 10. But otherwise, no, it's an expression of the animal soul. So the fact that if we feel that we're constantly in a struggle of some sort, it's not struggle. We're not talking here about a struggle with someone, right? We're not talking about you're struggling with another person. This person is like devious, or this person is manipulative. This person is whatever, right? We're not talking at all about struggling with someone else. We're talking about the struggle within ourselves. And the struggle is not between what's better for me right now. Should I do this or do that? Because that can also be just different expressions of the animal soul. Here is the struggle between the godly soul that wants to have complete control. And if it doesn't have complete control, because we're not righteous, as we will learn in the next chapter, so whatever form of control that it does have over us, right, that's what its desire is. And when we're aware, so then we can at least be in the struggle and recognize that I have now the power, I have the freedom to choose between what my animal soul desires and what my godly soul desires. Now that we understand the distinction between them, we understand that life is a struggle, and it's meant to be a struggle. The more we struggle, the truer, the more free we can be. The less we struggle, right, the more we're just living on autopilot. Which doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. You could be doing good things, right? But it just means we're not truly free, and we're not really in the waging that battle. And the truth be said, we have to be honest with ourselves, is that a good part of my day we're not, at least in mine. I'm not always struggling, not every moment, my godly soul versus my animal soul, and so on. And honestly, probably a lot of the times we're not engaged in a struggle, and even if we have that struggle, not necessarily it is really between the godly soul and the animal soul. It could be just, again, as I said, like, well, what gives me more comfort? What gives me more, feel good? So, then that's not a struggle between godly soul and animal soul. That's just within the animal soul, different, different levels of it. If it's about what God needs me versus what I want, that's definitely a struggle. But we're going to learn a lot more about this, so stay tuned. AJ, Boker Tov. Lily from Estonia, Shalom. Darren is with us from Las Vegas. Linda from Nebraska. Rivka, good afternoon, I think from somewhere in Germany. Oh, yes, from Germany, right. Arthur from Sunrise, Florida. Thank you for joining. Anne from Brookhaven, Georgia. Good morning. Yeah, and from Mexico, Boker Tov Migs is with us from the Philippines. Mark, morning. Bethel Erev Tov from Biafra. Wow, okay. Thank you for joining. Marjorie from Dania Beach, good morning. And John is with us from San Francisco. Shaheen, good morning to you in New York. Edith in the Philippines, shalom. Karina, Boker Tov. Alice. In Baltimore, Joatha from Brazil, Tony from Costa Rica, Franklin, shalom. Amen, Denise. Nadia, okay. And on Instagram, Valanya from Brazil. And who else is with us on Instagram? If you give me your names, that'd be great, because I can't figure them out often. And if not a problem. Novosibirsk, Siberia. Oh, Mark, thank you for joining. All right, folks, today is Asar B'Tevis, the 10th day of the month of Tevis. Today's a fast day. It begins at dawn time and goes till to nightfall. Here in Montreal, it's 5:01 as it's winter, so therefore it's early. And today is the day that the first Holy Temple is somewhere in the year 300 before the Common Era. I don't recall the exact 300 and something before the Common Era. Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, surrounded Jerusalem, and surrounding Jerusalem was cutting it off and ready for its ultimate destruction. So this is the beginning of, shall we say, the end, or to the destruction. And what does that teach us in life? That when we allow the Babylonian king, which is a metaphor over here for the animal soul, to surround us, so then, of course, when we're surrounded and we're just surrounded by the animal soul's pleasure, desire for pleasure, for comfort, and so on, ultimately, it'll be the beginning of the end. And hence, got to be careful with that. Yeah, a lot to fabric. All right, folks. As I mentioned, today is a fast day. Everybody who is fasting, have a easy and meaningful fast. And most importantly, it should be the beginning of the end, meaning the beginning of the days in the end, which is the days of Mashiach. That's what it should be, Mashiach now. Thank you for joining. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Montreal, Canada, and Chabad Zichron Yudeshim, where it's wonderful to share with you, and please share with others. Have a wonderful day.